One of the most critical things you can do in retirement preparation is to make sure that you've got a retirement budget put together. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com and get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. Inside of that meeting, we will discuss for you how to put together a retirement budget so that you can prepare to separate from your life after work, from the workforce, so that you can go in and enjoy that next part of life. Again, that's yourlifeafterwork.com or call 800-928-4001. Get in for your Next Steps meeting. It's 90 minutes. It's complimentary. We'll give you things to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it into writing. Welcome back to Your Retirement Playbook and this week's show, Retirement Roadblocks. We know there's a lot of people that are concerned with what's going on inside of the market, new retirees, and in some cases, people have been retired for 3 or 4 years. What can I expect? What is going on? Well, I find many times that the best answers actually come from framing the best questions. So here's what I would tell you to write down before you make a retirement mistake. What is the best that can happen? That'd be the first question. The second is, what is the worst that can happen? The third, and this is critical, so don't miss it, can you live with the worst thing happening? Now, again, we take care of families who don't want to worry about their money so that you don't make inefficient financial mistakes that lead to frustration and sometimes even devastation. And what we're trying to do is help you prevent those retirement mistakes. So it is retirement roadblocks. The first one, obviously, to having a roadblock in your retirement would be running out of money, right? So when you ask yourself, what's the best that can happen? What's the worst, and can I live with it? Can you live with running out of money? And the answer is, believe it or not, sometimes. There are people who live and exist on Social Security, which doesn't run out because the government can print money. Is it the lifestyle that you intended, desired, wanted? Probably not. Not if you're taking the time to listen to this show. But can you exist? Well, you need to know that. And if you go back and listen to the first part of this show, you will find out we talked about a retirement budget. And that gives you an idea of what's going on. Inside of that budget, we broke expenditures down to fixed and social. Social is discretionary. If the worst happens and you do run out of investment money in your IRA, your 401k, or other assets, that would be the worst. Can you live with that? Would be dependent upon that fixed income from Social Security or another source being able to take care of those fixed expenditures as you went through and lived the rest of your remaining life. So running out of money would be one of those right up there at the top. Drawdowns. What in the world is a drawdown? Well, drawdown is whatever your high water mark is in your account. Let's say it was $1 million. Right, so you hit that $1 million and it hit. You're not taking any money out right now, possibly. You're not using it, but boy, that statement came and it said you were a millionaire. Old Jed and the millionaire and the Clampetts. That felt good, right? There's some emotional strength and there's something to that number. Let's just face it and admit it. Most of us who are listening to the show or doing the show grew up when $1 million was a lot of money. You probably have more. It may not be enough for retirement, but let's just say that it was that $1 million. And all of a sudden the market started to go down and it fell, let's say, down to 800,000. You've lost 20% on paper of what you had before. Right? So now we look at our question, right? Best answers come from the best questions. What's the best that can happen? Well, the market rebounds. It comes back up. It has always historically. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than others. But as long as you have a diversified portfolio, and you're certainly, if you're not taking any money out of it, historically over time, it has gone and worked its way back up to even higher highs. And you may say, Boulder Dash, and I would say, listen, I've done this probably longer than you, but I'm going to give you some key dates. Black Monday in '87, 2 weeks after I started in the industry. The tech wreck, March 10th of 2000. The Great Recession in 2008 and 2009. Anytime you want to go back to the pandemic in March of 2020, pick a day in there for me that you wouldn't have invested and today not have more money in a diversified portfolio, and I will say that I was wrong. But you can't find those days, right? Historically, the market does tend to work its way up. Now, remember, if you're pulling money out, and that's why we always talk about accumulation, preservation, and distribution, the three phases of finance. If you're pulling money out and you spend it at today's marketplace and it didn't have the ability to grow back up, then you truly did have a huge loss. And we're going to talk about that later in today's show. But that drawdown, what is the best that can happen? Well, you're down 20% and the market goes back up and it gets back up and above and beyond where it was. That's great. What's the worst that can happen? Well, in my opinion, the worst that can happen is it takes a long time to get back to even. Now, again, in a diversified portfolio, I don't think that's the case, but there are no guarantees or certainties in life. The market is no different. That statements are no different. When you're in individual equities, and very, very few of them, and not properly diversified, it can happen easier because things do go to zero. We've got a lot of companies that are down 80, 90%, and in some cases even more this year. So if you happen to be in a handful of those, sitting around and waiting for them to get back to square one, or back to your high water mark, I should say, could be a challenging situation. The drawdown does not affect you financially during the preservation stage. During accumulation, the market being down is actually a beneficial thing because you're buying things betting that it's going to be worth more in the future. Had a young man this morning ask me about a LeBron James baseball or basketball card. And he said, Joe, this card's worth 25 grand. Should I sell it today? And I gave him the two rules, and he was wise. He already knew about taxes. He had already looked at the tax implication. But the second part of it is never sell something without knowing what you'll do with the capital. Just because somebody gives you a price that you believe is high, the market may go higher, or you believe it may go lower, right? Just because they do that doesn't tell us anything without how we know we're going to use the capital. The same is true when you look at drawdown inside of a market, right? The market is now down close to 20-25% at the time of this recording from where it was at its all-time high. And so what I told the young man is if I were going to buy a LeBron James basketball card, there was a greater probability of me buying it in January when the market was at a good high than there would be today when the market is now already down by 20 or 25%. What would I do with $25,000 if I had to be able to redeploy it? If I brought it in, paid the taxes, now I've got my 20 grand, and now I have to redeploy it. Where would I put it? Probably not in a collector's item right now. I would probably go to a marketplace that's already down. That's just me. That doesn't mean that is necessarily right for you. Remember, this is my opinion and how I look at money in terms of what is going on. So what is the worst that can happen? What is the best that can happen? And can you live with the worst thing happening? For me, one of the worst periods of time was 2008, 2009. It moved me emotionally, and people say, I'm sure it was tough on your firm, Joe. I don't know how you do this. I get so many questions and comments at either the golf course, and thanks for the words on the golf show, by the way. I did that last week. That was the theme. If you think about the stuff that goes on inside of life, I can understand why you on the other side, especially those of you who do this on your own, would think that I'm having a bad time. But I get many more emails going, Joe, we're praying for you, we're thinking about your team, than I do the what in the world are you doing or what in the world are you thinking. I can understand why you would think it would be hard, but you have to understand we have a process, we're content. We do not chase IPOs and things that go way high real quickly because they can also fall real quickly. What we're trying to do is get on base, score runs, protect people's net worth, and make sure that you can truly enjoy your life after work. Well, we put a lot of thought into this, and there's not a lot of emotion that goes into that. We all have biases, for sure. I have opinions. But what we try to do is to provide people with a process that you can be content with, that you understand. And when we got into 2008 and 2009, we had a handful of people who said, Joe, I would rather go back to work than take money out of my account when the market was down. And we brought them in and we did their family update and we reminded them we already had a certain percentage in cash, more than enough to fund a year of their cash needs. We didn't want to be over allocated to the market as we saw changes that occurred. Honestly, in October of 2007, we began to accumulate cash which gave them the luxury of not making changes. So the people that emotionally got charged up in '08 and '09 and fearful of running out of money, the worst that could possibly happen when you look at the question, what they did was either lived on less, which I don't consider a success for me. I consider it a failure upon myself. Or they went and got another source of income along the way. Well, 3 years later, history will tell you the market was back to where it was. Their income never should have changed. And we have a process for making those changes, but we'll never do it in a 1 year or a 2 year period of time. If there needs to be a change, it needs to occur over 3 years. So if a market has had a big rise where you could conceivably be able to spend more money, we come in, we run a series of projections with you. We sit down because we collaborate with you. We don't tell you what to do. This is not a dictatorship. But we tell you, based on the data, here is our recommended amount of money that you could increase the amount of income that you could take. That's the best that can happen. What's the worst that can happen? 3 years from now, based on what's happened in the economy or the markets, you may need to take a reduction in what your distribution is, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20%. I wouldn't think it would be any more than that if it would be that at all. But if that's the case, you've got 3 years to prepare for it. And let's face it, most of us at our age, when we have 3 years to adjust, can make accommodations if necessary. But you've got to have that runway, one that is not emotional, one that deals with the facts, one that deals with a fiduciary, somebody who has to treat your money as if it were theirs and you were in the same situation. That's what we do at the Financial Enhancement Group. So we want to make sure people don't get caught up in '08 and '09 or pandemics or tech wrecks and get caught with one thought on their mind without really being open to the understanding and logic of how it works. There are allocation maneuvers you should be considering right now, some from the tax rate and some just from dealing with life. But we want to give you some of those strategies in the upcoming segments to think about in allocation changes that you really, really want to make. The last thing I'm going to give you about in terms of the best, the worst, and can you live with the worst are tax rates. Right? The tax rates today we know are going higher at the end of 2025. So January of 2026, the federal tax rate increases. That is a certainty unless they have Congress vote with 60 senators voting the same way between now and then. Not real likely. They're not going down from here. You have to be able to forecast your tax rate from here to then, as well as into the future. What do you think our tax rates have to be? That will help you make the best decisions you can. It's not just running out of money. That is truly one risk to retirement. But always ask yourself, in most situations, what is the best can happen if I do this? What is the worst that can happen if I do this? And can I live with the worst? Pulling all the money out of the market and not getting back in, most of you can't live with.